right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're really excited to dig into a book that's considered a classic in the personal development world.
Yeah, it's one that's been on my list for a while, and I have to say it did not disappoint.
The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. So this book, it's packed with some pretty bold claims about what our minds are truly capable of, right?
Definitely bold, and you know what? They really make you think.
It's like the idea that most of us are only using about 10% of our mind's potential.
10%. Can you imagine what we could achieve if we could tap into the other 90%?
Right. Talk about untapped potential. It reminds me of that saying, we only use a small fraction of our brains.
Exactly. And Murphy takes it a step further. He's not just talking about some abstract mental capacity. He's saying this untapped potential influences every single area of our lives.
Our success, our health, our relationships,
even our happiness and sense of fulfillment.
It's like we've got this incredible power within us, this hidden superpower, and we're walking around completely oblivious.
And the thing is, most of us are. We're so used to operating on autopilot, letting our conscious minds run the show.
And Murphy argues that it's our subconscious mind that's really calling the shots, right?
Absolutely. Think about it. How much of your day do you spend consciously thinking about every little action you take? Every breath, every step, every word?
Not very much. It's more like we're running on pre-programmed software most of the time.
And that software, that's your subconscious mind at work.
He uses this really cool analogy in the book. He compares it to the process of magnetizing iron.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You know how an ordinary piece of iron can suddenly lift so much more weight once it becomes magnetized?
Like unlocking a hidden strength.
Exactly. And that's the potential that Murphy sees in us when we learn to tap into the power of our subconscious minds.
It's not just some vague idea either.
Yeah.
He backs it up with all these amazing stories, real-life examples of people who achieved incredible things.
Like, remember the Miracle Man? The guy who was in that horrific plane crash?
Oh, yeah, the one where doctors told him he'd never walk again.
And he was determined to prove them wrong.
By Christmas, no less.
Right. He would spend hours each day just picturing himself walking, feeling the strength returning to his legs.
Visualizing himself healthy and whole.
And get this, against all odds, on Christmas Eve, he walked out of that hospital on his own 2 feet.
Incredible story, right? Now, some people might hear that and think,
Well,
okay, that's a nice story, but it's just a fluke, right?
But Murphy would say it's not a fluke at all. It's the power of the subconscious mind at work.
And you know, there's actually a lot of scientific research that supports this idea, even if they don't always call it the subconscious mind.
Like what kind of research?
Well, take the placebo effect, for example. Scientists have proven time and again that our beliefs about a treatment can have a real impact on our physical health.
Even the treatment itself is fake.
Exactly. It all comes down to our expectations, our beliefs, and how those beliefs, even subconscious ones, can influence our reality.
So it's not just about positive thinking. It's about tapping into something much deeper.
It's about rewiring our minds at a subconscious level to create the results we want in our lives.
Which is a pretty powerful concept when you think about it.
Definitely makes you wonder what we're truly capable of, doesn't it?
Okay, so that's a pretty amazing story. But how do we actually access that power? How do we tap into that other 90% and start creating those kinds of results in our own lives?
Well, the good news is Murphy doesn't just leave us hanging with these incredible stories. He actually lays out some really specific techniques that anyone can use.
Techniques for influencing our subconscious mind.
Exactly.
Like what kind of techniques are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most well-known ones is what he calls the 5-minute rule.
The 5-minute rule.
Yeah, have you heard of this one?
I think so, but remind me how it works.
Basically, Murphy says that the 5 minutes right before you fall asleep and the 5 minutes right after you wake up, those are prime time for influencing your subconscious mind.
Why those times in particular?
Because that's when your conscious mind is kind of drifting off, you know, it's not as active, not as guarded.
So your subconscious is more receptive to suggestions.
Exactly. It's like when you're downloading a software update on your computer, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to interrupt it in the middle of the process.
Makes sense.
So during those 5 minutes, Murphy recommends focusing intently on your desired outcome, whatever it may be.
And not just thinking about it, but really feeling it, right?
Yes. Visualizing it as if it's already happening. He calls this the mental movie method.
The mental movie method.
And he gives this great example of a real estate agent who was trying to sell this property.
Okay.
It had been on the market for months. Nobody was biting, and she was starting to lose hope.
Yeah, I've been there.
Right. It's the worst.
So what does she do?
She decided to try this mental movie method.
Okay.
Every night before bed, she would close her eyes and visualize this perfect buyer walking into the house, falling in love with it, signing the papers, the whole 9 yards. And guess what? Within a few weeks, she sold the property.
No way.
I know, right? It sounds almost too simple to be true.
But it worked.
It did. And there's actually a scientific basis for why this kind of visualization works.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
It all comes down to something called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity, what is that?
Basically, it refers to your brain's ability to change and rewire itself based on your experiences and thoughts.
So by consistently visualizing something, you're essentially strengthening those neural pathways in your brain.
Making that outcome more likely to occur.
Wow, so we really can rewire our brains just by thinking differently.
That's the idea. And the cool thing is, it's not just about visualizing material success or achieving specific goals either.
What else can we use it for?
Murphy says this applies to every area of our lives, our relationships, our health, our fears, you name it.
So if we're constantly thinking negative thoughts, we're actually reinforcing those negative patterns in our minds.
And attracting more negativity into our lives.
But if we can shift our thinking, focus on the positive, visualize what we want, we can start to create a whole new reality for ourselves.
Exactly. It's about taking control of our thoughts and beliefs and using them to consciously create the life we desire.
That's pretty empowering when you think about it.
It really is. And it reminds me of another great story from the book about this teenage boy.
Oh, yeah. What was his story?
He was struggling in almost every area of his life. Grades, relationships with his parents, self-esteem, you name it.
Sounds rough.
It was. And someone suggested he try using affirmations.
Affirmations.
Yeah, like repeating positive statements to himself every day.
Like, I am worthy or something like that.
Exactly. Things like, I am intelligent, I am capable, I am loved.
Interesting.
And he was really skeptical at first.
I bet. Like, how is saying some words going to magically change my life, right?
Right. But he decided to give it a try anyway.
And what happened?
Slowly but surely, he started to see changes in his life.
Like, what kind of changes?
His grades started to improve.
No way.
Yeah. And his relationship with his parents got a little bit easier.
Just from repeating these positive statements?
It's pretty remarkable, right?
It is.
But it makes sense when you think about the power of our subconscious minds.
So he was essentially rewiring his self-image by repeating these positive affirmations.
Exactly.
And as his self-image changed, his reality began to reflect that.
It's like the old saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
So much of it comes down to our beliefs about ourselves and about what's possible.
Exactly. Our beliefs shape our thoughts shape our actions, and our actions shape our reality.
It's all connected.
It really is. It really is mind-blowing when you think about the power we have within us.
It is. And it's not just about achieving success or material things, right? Murphy also talks a lot about how we can use our subconscious minds to overcome fear and anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. Our fears, our doubts, our insecurity, so much of that is rooted in our subconscious programming.
Right. Like, we might not even be consciously aware of why we're afraid of something, but it's like there's this underlying belief system driving those feelings.
Exactly. And he tells this amazing story in the book about a young boy who had this intense fear of water.
Oh, yeah. What was his story again? I remember it was something about falling into a pool as a child.
Yeah, he'd had this really traumatic experience, and it created this phobia that he just couldn't shake.
He wouldn't even go near a bathtub, right?
Right. It was that bad.
So how did he overcome it?
Well, someone introduced him to the power of visualization.
Visualization, okay.
Yeah, they had him sit quietly and just imagine himself in the water, but this time feeling safe, happy, in control.
So basically rewriting the negative association he had with water.
Exactly. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. He had to practice this visualization over and over again.
Consistency is key, right? Like with those affirmations we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And eventually, guess what happened?
He overcame his fear.
He did. He was able to go swimming, take baths, no problem.
That's incredible. Just goes to show you how powerful our minds really are.
It really does. And it makes you realize that so much of what we perceive as limitations are really just self-imposed beliefs rooted in our subconscious.
So how do we start to dismantle those limiting beliefs? Because I think that's something a lot of us struggle with.
Well, Murphy talks a lot about the importance of forgiveness in this context.
Forgiveness. How does that tie into rewiring our subconscious minds?
Well, he has this great quote. He says, Holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Oof, that's a powerful image.
Right, and it's so true. When we hold on to those negative emotions, it eats away at us from the inside out.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
And Murphy's point is that forgiveness isn't about condoning bad behavior or letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing ourselves from that negative energy.
So we can move on.
Exactly. And it's not always easy, of course, but it's a process. And it starts with a conscious decision to release those feelings of anger and resentment.
And that's where the subconscious mind comes in again, right?
Exactly. By practicing forgiveness, by choosing to let go of that negativity, we create space for healing and growth.
It's like we're clearing out the weeds to make room for something new to grow.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Visualization, affirmations, forgiveness. It's a lot to take in. What's the key takeaway here for our listeners? What should they do with all this information?
Here's the thing. Your subconscious mind is always listening. It's like this incredibly powerful computer that's constantly processing information and shaping your reality.
Whether we're aware of it or not.
Exactly. So the question is, what are you feeding your subconscious mind? Are you letting it run on autopilot, dictated by old programming and limiting beliefs? Or are you going to take control and start consciously creating the life you desire?
By using these techniques that we've been talking about.
Exactly. Visualization, affirmations, forgiveness. These are all tools that you can use to reprogram your subconscious mind.
And it's not about becoming some kind of superhuman or anything, right? It's about tapping into the power that's already within us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about realizing that we are not just victims of circumstance. We are creators of our own reality.
And it starts with that awareness, right? Paying attention to our thoughts, our beliefs, and making a conscious effort to shift them in a more positive direction.
That's the first step. And then it's about taking action, even if it's just 5 minutes a day of visualization or repeating affirmations to yourself in the mirror.
Because even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Absolutely. It's like anything else in life. The more you put in, the more you get out.
Well, on that note, if you're listening to this and something has resonated with you, if you're feeling even a little bit inspired, don't just let this information go in one ear and out the other.
Right. Take action.
Pick one technique, any technique, and give it a try. I think you'll be amazed at the power you discover within yourself. And hey, if you've had any experiences with these techniques yourself, whether it's visualization or affirmations or anything else we've talked about today, we'd love to hear about it. So feel free to share your stories in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring the incredible power of your mind.